YouTube comments from a video titled, "Why Medieval Bread Was a Superfood While Your Modern Bread Makes You Sick." Part 8.
Farmagiles wrote,
I think you have overlooked a rather important fact. Medieval bread was also full of grit from the milling process in those days, which led to premature tooth wear and ultimately, in many cases, death from malnutrition and slash or periodontal disease, abscesses, etc.
Charles, 4595 wrote,
No irritable bowel disease, no diabetes, no gluten sensitivity. How would you know? Did you read people's medical records from 700 years ago? They had no idea what these conditions were at the time, and life expectancy in the 1300s was around 30 to 35 years of age. Bravo, genius. Keep up the hippie BS.
At Alexander Carnivore wrote,
I liked the plain, clear explanation in this video. I was particularly interested in the mention of calcium propionate. I have seen it on the ingredient list of bread sold in grocery stores. Always wondered what that was.
At MSP82 NDABN wrote,
In the US, they spray a wheat with Roundup at harvest time to desiccate it so it dries on the stalk to prevent mold from growing on it after harvest, essentially poisoning it and us.
At Adam 346 wrote,
Yeah. Less overall illness because most people died before their second birthday. AVG age was around 40 in the Middle Ages because child mortality was so high. Maybe, just maybe your preconceived notions of old-timey isn't really a thing, but a fantasy you created in your head. AVG life expectancy in even terrible countries is in the mid to high 60s. Most people get to 40 without any major medical issues. You cannot possibly know how many people in the Middle Ages had what illness at what time at. The only time it was written down was when there was a mass anything.
At Fernomale 5069 wrote,
Interesting. But it could be shortened by, if you remove some over-repeated points. Is anyone with scientific or relevant medical knowledge able to challenge some of the claims? But nonetheless, a stimulating video.
At Autumn Vulpus 369 wrote,
I used to buy and eat bread a yellow tea, but stopped because all bread is. Well, you soft, it's gross and disgusting and makes me sick. And am only 25 years old. That says a lot.
At Spencer Bookman 2523 wrote,
I wouldn't contradict this video entirely, but I wonder if some of the main points raised are strictly relevant. 1. A person working at manual labor for 12 HRS a day, most days, would naturally find it difficult to maintain a minimum desired weight without a marked increase of caloric intake compared to someone more sedentary. Medieval peasants may have been able to eat so much bread while not becoming overweight simply because they were expending that much more calories in their work. 2. It strikes me that the average life expectancy of a medieval peasant may not facilitate a full expression of the worst effects of type II diabetes in the general population. Also, maintaining proper weight and exercise are mitigating factors for this disease. Consequently, the true prevalence or propensity of type II diabetes at that time might be misinterpreted.
At Blueridge 98 wrote,
I am so glad I found this video. I've been having struggles with IBS. I need to find some of this bread made from heritage wheats and traditional processes.
At N1GHTR Wonder 666 wrote,
Calm down, Jesus. Take your rose-tinted glasses out of your ass for a second to realize a candy bar would have been called the staff of life when you only lived into your 20s.
At Bellicosporiah 6609 wrote,
Let's not forget that people in the Renaissance were never diagnosed with Crohn's disease, IBS, and ulcerative colitis, because medical science did not even recognize them until within the last 100 years or so. We have zero way to accurately track rises and falls in the occurrences of these conditions in any meaningful way to compare and contrast with anthropological data on foodstuffs.
At Art Lathers 3746 wrote,
I understand and appreciate the content, but this is clearly AI narration, and I'm so sick of it. The irony of berating modern technology for bread, which is delivered via the modern equivalent of ultra-processed human thought. Both are not real.
At Eric Keith 1466 wrote,
At the end of the day, it's just easier to not eat bread. The human body isn't designed for it. Even in the best case, such as an ancient heirloom wheat, slow ground and fermented, it's still not a good idea. There's a huge body of evidence that much of the chronic illness we're seeing today is from a high carbohydrate diet. Go keto or close to keto. You'll feel better than you have in your entire life, and you'll lose weight on top of it.
At Robert Staples 9207 wrote,
The title on this video is a total misrepresentation of fact to say new varieties of wheat are making people sick, whereas old varieties are not, is absolute nonsense. The selection of grains to this day is done the same way those so-called ancient grains were grown through naturally cross-breeding of the genes and selecting the most productive in whatever area you are trying to improve.
At Antonio Veloy 9107 wrote,
In Germany, most bakeries offer wholemeal rye breads and traditional sourdough loaves. Everyone knows that plain white bread isn't nearly as digestible or flavorful as the more natural alternatives. One of the most popular breads here is the classic King Ludwig bread, usually made with water, malted barley flour, rye sourdough, soy flour, malted wheat and rye flours, yeast, and iodized salt. Some variations also use spelt, rye, or wheat flour along with malt, giving it that dense structure, hearty flavor, and subtle malty sweetness. Most people prefer grabbing their bread from an actual bakery rather than buying the mass-produced supermarket stuff, if they have a bakery nearby, that is. In the US, it seems like there just aren't as many traditional bakeries, so a lot of people end up buying whatever's on the shelves out of convenience. But honestly, baking a good loaf at home isn't that hard. After a few tries, you've got it down, and you won't need to rely on supermarket bread for your daily dose of gluten. And gluten itself isn't the villain people make it out to be. Folks in the past consumed plenty of it. Gluten is naturally abundant in rye, barley, wheat, and ancient grains like spelt and emmer. Intolerances often develop from prolonged exposure to a specific trigger, just like latex or nickel allergies. Bottom line, gluten isn't the problem. People are just overreacting and eating poorly. Your body can handle gluten, sugar, fats, just not in excess. Eat a varied diet, mix things up, and don't overload yourself with the same stuff every day. A little balance goes a long way.
At Arnberg wrote,
Quick question. Considering the high mortality rate of young children back then, is it even possible to do a proper comparison? Before the early 1900s, diabetes was more or less a death sentence. So no, they don't show up in statistics, especially not type 1. Type 2 were likely to be attributed to something else. IBS in the 17th century? Same story. Don't get me wrong, I agree that food today is questionable a lot of the time. But you're starting this video on very shaky ground.
At Luke_Tobin wrote,
Anyone in the UK watching this wanting decent flour that isn't enriched and has the wheat germ left in. Check out Stoats flour. Fantastic stone milled stuff by a family business in Dorset. Highly recommend.
At the Baxon wrote,
I found out in my 40s I have had a gluten sensitivity my entire life. Once cutting out gluten, I feel like I got a whole new life. I do miss bread, though.
At Zulu Bravo U6C wrote,
Bread today has so many additives and preservatives, and even cellulose. I've come to realize that a lot of the food manufacturers have been taken over by sinister individuals whose sole intent is to poison and keep people sick for the pharmaceutical industry and the medical community to profit from. The food industry has become another arch enemy to humanity with the poisons in the food they manufacture. Everything is genetically modified. Everything is bioengineered. The Satanists that are in control of food processing of every corporation want to destroy everything that God created for us to eat.
At Burridge 9885 wrote,
Mi intuition years ago made me ask, how could the stuff of life the food Roman soldiers ate that made them the strongest army in the world at the time be the kiss of death in our modern age? Something has to be different. 106. I started buying whole grain, organic, heirloom wheat and other grains, milling it myself and baking bread, and never looked back. No digestive issues, in fact, excellent colon health due to high fiber and no weight gain or bloating. Antes, the taste is so much better. Who's doing what we always have done for centuries without problems is what we need to do now, to not have problems with his great food source.
At Autistic Guitar 666 wrote,
I do agree that wheat-containing products are, especially in the US, much different now and much less healthy. However, you should really accredit this more to the additives in the flour and less to the breeding. You claim that wheat quality has dropped a lot since the Green Revolution. However, I cannot find any proof anywhere that supports that earlier varieties contain less starch, pectins or lectins, and yes, we still have a lot of those varieties. They are not lost. To my knowledge, there is also no link between the size of the genome of a plant and its health benefits. That is a bit of a strange claim, I think.
At Sydney Rose 6455 wrote,
I know I shouldn't type this only about 7 minutes in, but I expected something different, like benefits of baking with different types of wood in a wood-burning oven or something. Anyway, after I found out wheat is connected to gut health and gut health is connected to inflammation, I've been making my own just add water pancake mix, but replacing 2 1/4 cups out of 4 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour with whole wheat flour. And then after learning about benefits of other seeds like chia seeds, sprinkled some into my pancakes too. I feel like I've noticed a slight change, but can't tell, so I've been thinking of experimenting with other flours, but mostly stuff like acorn, mesquite, amaranth, and a few others I can't think of right now. I'll probably put einkorn flour in the list too.
It calls it like I sees its wrote.
I deployed to Africa, and the Moroccan army was there as well. They were old school army with cooks and field kitchens, so everything was made fresh daily. They would bake bread every morning, and you could smell it miles away. Soon they came around selling loaves of bread for stupid cheap. After taking Q-Bite, we were all addicted and basically started living off that bread and water daily. It was the best bread I ever had. Soon they were making bread delivery to almost every unit around. I'd always get 2 loaves to last the day. Then we'd just go to Thier Mess and eat there. We paid them for everything, but it was dirt cheap and it helped them out, and we ate real food instead of army rations. They said it's the same bread they've made at home for centuries.
A Dang 3 wrote,
In the Middle Ages, if individuals survived childhood, they could expect to live into their 50s or 60s. As of now, the average life expectancy is approximately 78 po in T4 years. Obviously, medieval bread wasn't much of a superfood, and current bread isn't really killing us if our life expectancy has gone up substantially since then. It's more like the preservatives in modern bread are keeping us from getting food poisoning and dying instead of killing us.
At Raymond Pagels wrote,
I believe there is a lot of truth here, but also some sensationalism. How do we know that medieval people did not suffer from gut issues? How much health data is available from the 13th century? Maybe some of these problems have increased because medical science has only recently defined them and started tracking them.
Patty Carl Jackson wrote,
Bread has never been a superfood in any sense of the word. Bread doesn't actually offer us much in the way of nutrients to actually survive healthfully long term.
At Nicola Kosick 8711 wrote,
When I and my brothers were little, my father would say, "Do you know what happens to people that don't behave? They go to jail. I give punishments because if I don't, one day police will. And do you know what happens then? You go to the judge, and if he decides you're bad enough, then off to jail people go. Do you know what they eat in jail? They get two things, and that's it: bread and water. So if you don't want to eat only bread and water the rest of your life, you must listen." Ha ha, bread tends to make me pretty sick. This works wonders in the behavior department. Up there with Santa is watching. Now imagine telling it to celiac kids or ones with wheat, yeast or mold allergies combined. Good little children abound, haha.
At Hermes06 wrote,
Okay, but at 50 you don't know whether people had diabetes or a gluten reaction back then, because in 1300 AD, people just died from that, and the grieving family blamed a witch. Meaning they could not document something they did not know of. That said, I love my local baker's whole grain bread with seeds, and yes, people, the anti-seed oils fad is a dumb grift. Reduce refined sugars, fats and proteins, and you'll be glad.
Asalg 1386 wrote,
Bread could never be called a superfood. Going back to the ancient Egyptians, which ate a heavily plant-based diet with a lot of wheat, had modern-day diseases of being overweight and metabolic syndrome and heart problems. Bread was a big cause of that.
Eddie Was Brave for 2 whole seconds wrote,
It's the same with chickpeas and lentils. You need to soak them for more than a day. I normally soak them for a week and wash and rinse them when I want to eat them.
At Dougraver 6552 wrote,
Nothing goes in my grocery cart without first reading the list of ingredients. In my experience, you won't find real bread being only flour, water, yeast and salt in any modern-day chain grocery store. I have been baking my own bread for 2 years, and it is worth the effort, and it does not need to complicated or terribly time-consuming. I mix flour, water, yeast and salt. I like to add some extra virgin olive oil together in a bowl, then put it immediately into the refrigerator for 48 hours. Kneading it inside the bowl a few times a day during the fermentation takes just 2 minutes each kneading, then bake it at 400 F to an internal temperature of 195 F. It's not difficult. Just a wooden spoon to clean under the kitchen faucet, no soap, each day, and one bowl to clean at the end.
At Rob Schoen 5CD wrote,
He doesn't address whole wheat bread or whole wheat flour you can get in a store. I understand it's not stone ground, but it should be better than white bread. How much better or worse?
At Madeline Sanders C6P wrote,
I have all the symptoms you describe except feeling sick. That only happens when flour is used to make a batter or coating. I thought GM grains were banned in the UK. So why are our governments not protecting us? My grandmother taught me how to bake bread in the 70s. I never felt like this after eating it. It's difficult to get bread making flour these days, especially at supermarkets.
Ed Orgasmic wrote,
Very good example of how we have been used yet again for profit. So we had medieval bread or just pure evil bread. This world would be so much better if greed wasn't one of our sins. Thank you for this insight. Slash.
Eddie Was Brave for 2 whole seconds wrote,
If I eat bread, I get heartburn and acid reflux, so I can't eat it. Haven't eaten it for years. I used to eat bread as a kid 45 to 50 years ago. Mom used to make sandwiches for me for school lunch.
At South Towns Joe 32 wrote,
People are slobs. They want fast, cheap, and easy. No one cares about nutrition. I've been making bread products for decades, using high-quality products. Adding multiple enriched products results in high nutrition quality products that has zero negative impact on the body. That's the closest way to get medieval grain products without a time machine.
At Skynote 1728 wrote,
If you go through history, you can actually see how the bread companies went all over the world destroying all the known wheat that they could find all over so that their wheat could be the only type, and the genetically modified it to be different, sweeter, but with less nutrients.
At Rivaldo Macari 2640 wrote,
I am diabetic since 9 years old, and the blood sugar part that compares with a chocolate bar is really true. It is more safe or manageable for me to eat chocolate than bread.
Campaignful wrote,
I'm very early in the video and I am not arguing with anything, but your point about the 1300s workmen must also take into account the heart healthy benefits of physical activity. Modern workers are desperately low on physical activity and we're eating the bad bread to a fault.
Kumdrakritten wrote,
We had a local restaurant that would make this bread. It was so delicious. They would offer it on weekends when they had a beef roast and salad bar special. Always crowded and always sold out.
At Trevor Powell 4851 wrote,
If they did that to wheat, what makes you think they didn't do that to barley and rice? I question the idea that rice is any better, just saying.
G.D. Hammond 9812 wrote,
A person who reached the age of 25 in medieval England could expect to live into their early 50s. Did medieval bread aid or hinder longevity? Your conclusions seem to be based on assumptions rather than data. On the other hand, 90% of the time that I eat bread, it's bread I baked myself.
At SWF 50
In Australia, bread has folic acid. This is allegedly to be a replacement for folate. Cereals and flour have folate acid, and this prevents the folate you get from food.
At John Polo 8413 wrote,
I love bread. I'm glad I don't have the issues other people have with the commercial bread generally available. At around 2 verse 52, just to stay soft on a shelf. What was the shelf life of bread before the modern methods corrupted bread? I'm guessing that people either ate it right away or ate it even if it was hard or rock, not caring if it was soft. Shelf life only became important when companies like Wonder wanted to maximize profit. But I am curious about how long bread was stored for and if people cared about it being soft or not. The stone ground method sounds preferable, since it preserves much more of the nutrients. How much of the stone mill got into the bread, though? As dust or little pebbles?
S_vis_Mari_MA wrote,
Centuries ago, working people would not have developed insulin resistance or diabetes. 1. They ate unprocessed foods. 2. They exercised through necessity. 3. No obesity. 4. They did not live long enough to develop it as an age-related condition.
At Murdabalina 3451 wrote,
Except for coeliacs and those who are allergic to gluten. It wasn't until the Dutch famine of World War II that the cause of coeliac was discovered. During the 1944 Poeforstue 45 hunger winter, Dutch pediatrician Willem Karel Dikke observed that children with celiac disease improved significantly when bread was scarce because the Netherlands was blockaded and wheat was unavailable. When Allied planes dropped bread after the war, his patients relapsed, which confirmed his hypothesis that wheat protein, or gluten, was the trigger.
At Pakistan Ice Cream 000 wrote,
There are also rumors that world governments have been giving the wrong vitamin D3 recommended 3 stages, that is to say they misleadingly advise people they only need 10%. 5 decimos que de moda de compañero de Pinis de Le Mundo.
The Tempest Fugit KK1DK wrote,
Very interesting video. Thanks. Short story. Over 50 years ago, the boss started ordering plastic tubs of blueberry filling for the donuts we made. I read the label. It was, in fact, made from apples. At no time was there ever a single blueberry anywhere near that filling. A little unsettling to know that, today, it's anybody's guess as to what can be labeled, legally, as being blueberry filling, or anything else, for that matter.
At Arthur 5523 wrote,
The information really shows how much is lost in the way food is processed. The heat from the milling machines burning off the oils and natural seeds is something I would have never considered. I always knew processed foods were inferior to natural food, but this video demonstrates how the nutrition is lost through each of the steps on the food industry.
The CD3 wrote,
Correlation doesn't equal causation, blah, blah, blah. So tired of the hand waving, we're never going to get mainstream science or the food industry to change their ways. Therefore, we must change ours.
At user_Simon wrote,
It's FCKN criminal what they did. I don't understand how society hasn't crumbled yet with such total as Hoias running this show. We have like 5 years left before total collapse.
At JohnSbit 7229 wrote,
We make our own homemade bread. No bloating, no glycemic crash. 500 grams loaf. Organic rye and 20% organic white flour. Pinch of Celtic salt. Sourdough starter. 24 HR prep and baked. Delicious.
At routing_for_sanity wrote,
I've been diagnosed celiac a couple years ago. My life is extremely difficult now. No eating out, no foods from gluten-contaminated kitchens. All meals self-prepped. I'm curious if I can eat actual real bread.
At Nevermind 1117 wrote,
I grew up in the Soviet Union, the country the world was taught to hate. As a part of schooling, we have been taken to the bread-making factories. We could see the whole process ourselves. The dough starters, no yeast, just healthy flour and water fermentation based, had been ripening with the dough overnight to be baked early in the morning and midday. There were 2 baking schedules per day. We grew up on a good healthy bread and other organic and wholesome foods. We didn't have dozens of choices of the same item, but we were healthy. And then the West broke it all. You can see a huge amount of all sorts of rubbish imitation of food now. And the new generations don't even know this anymore.
At Joluni 1498 wrote,
Watching this, I thought, What the hell is he on about? Then I realized, oh, that must be Murica. May you are UK based, but to be honest, that's not really a problem for the rest of the world as far as I know. Either way, appreciate you spreading this knowledge and hopefully reaching some people be aware of it.
A Colorado Streaming wrote,
I suspect a lot of people that are gluten intolerant are actually allergic to today's bread and not the gluten. There are stories from Utah of people that thought they were gluten intolerant, but were able to eat the heritage bread from the small Mormon family farms out in Utah with the heirloom wheat.
Popeye Gordon wrote,
White bread does not make you sick, so the headline is misleading. Downvoted. Bleached white flour is only an absence of fiber and nutrition. It is not poison. It simply does not contain the fiber and nutrition we should all be getting from wholesome breads that help to prevent colon cancer. Just be honest and say white bread lacks nutritional value except for empty calories. We don't have to eat bread at all to be healthy as long as we have other good sources of nutrients and fiber. My whole grain breads keep for months in the refrigerator. Same goes for white rice. You can starve to death on a diet of unfortified white rice only, while you can live for years on brown rice only.
Chris Guarnieri G2H wrote,
This is me. Not surprisingly, I don't eat bread any longer. I have discovered small farms flours which I can eat safely. Thank you for this informative video.
Admacing 1965 wrote,
It's always the endless reservoir of human stupidity. It has always been there, and always will be, except since Enlightenment we stripped away the natural hesitancy, maybe we're not all-knowing, and replaced it with the brutal science knows everything. Slogan.
Julian Morris 9951 wrote,
Here's the thing though, if food wasn't produced on an industrial scale, we couldn't feed the population. Britain hasn't been self-sufficient in food for a couple of 100 years now.
Wilcrez the Wanderer wrote,
I feel like your entire video is going to neglect the fact that they spent vastly more energy throughout the day, and people did have issues with bread to where they couldn't eat since the first agricultural revolution. But that's not convenient for pseudoscience quacks.
Jim WT8XB wrote,
Everyone says you need a starter for the bread, but nobody, not even the recipes, tell you what it is, how to make it, and what to do with it. Anyone?
Patreasin 1982 wrote,
Only truth. Bro, I completely agree. I've stopped eating anything bread alike and am much better off. As a small kid, I didn't have any bread-related problems. It's always the same. Corporate greed.
Cool Individual 81 wrote,
The only problem we have with this video, and one's look these, is the use of the word we. We traded that system for convenience. We bred wheat that produces more but nourishes less. We mill it in ways that destroy its vitality. We added chemicals to extend shelf life. It really spreads a blame to all people that belongs mostly on the heads of a few. We used to eat normal bread and thought nothing different of it. It wasn't until specific greedy companies, corporations, and political entities that changed for generations to come what the population would be used to eating. And we knew no different because being used to real food, why would we question what we didn't know? This is partly why little gets done about anything. It's not a blame on the people, it's these business entities. The individuals who run and own them, as well as pay for lobbying for laws to allow them to legally put this crap in our food without being required to tell us. It's the political individuals who accept these bribes. It's the FSA who allows them through. This is where the blame belongs, not we the regular people who have been kicked around. lied to, and abused. We are cattle to them. We have no value in their eyes. Think their children eat this crap they feed to us.
A GameFi I wrote.
And on top of that, researchers were paid off by large corporations and organizations to push the false narrative that saturated fats are to blame for cardiovascular disease, even though there has never been a population of people with high CVD rates prior to processed foods.
At Hot Tractor 1999 wrote.
Some years ago, I knew a couple that had a bakery and a water-will-run milling machine made from huge stone wheels. People would bring their wheat and probably other grains, though I never saw that, and this couple would grind it for a portion of the flour. Slow and correspondingly low temperature that didn't heat the flour up like modern grinding practices. Their baked good were phenomenal. The flavors complex and rich, texture was amazing as well. They gave me some flour to try out, and my regular recipe produced wonderful bread.
At Faith Over Fearnock 2268 wrote.
I love this historical information. The modern food system is potent. I'm currently paying the price for consuming SAD most of my life, and this is why I learned to make sourdough. So that my daughter wouldn't ruin her gut just from consuming seed oil, chemical-laden bread products. Everyone please try to learn if you're able to. It's empowering. My next endeavor is to mill grain BC. Even the best organic flour in the grocery stores are considered to be dead flour.
At Sidewalk Astronomy Netherlands wrote.
You mean American bread. Dutch food is still varied and great and fresh, and German bread is even better. American bread stays fresh for a week. Enough said. DONOTEAT American food.
At Adeld 8833 wrote.
I have been weak my whole life, had cellulitis from the childhood, allergies, acne, bad hair, farting too much. Turns out it was a leaky gut. Dairy has casein, which is also a gluing protein, just like gluten. GMO fruits and veggies cause allergies too nowadays, specific proteins and the fruit acids in them. High fructose is bad for your liver, and there is no sweet food source that you can consume to have high enough potassium. Ending clean water. Herbicides. Industrialization and progress absolutely suck S.
At Mark Curtis 5265 wrote.
I have been making sourdough for about 6 months. A couple of weeks ago, I bought a soft white loaf. It was like crack, and I felt crap after. I'll not do it again.
At Uwakmadikalan Lightenman 922 wrote.
I'm so lucky to have enjoyed a 40-year marriage to a wife who understands these things. Mills her own einkorn, spelt and organic wheat, stone ground at home and home, baked with sourdough culture.
At Dane 3038 wrote.
We have to feed billions now. Go back to the original ways, and one good plague will cause starvation like the world has never seen. You don't know what you don't know.
At David Ernspiker wrote.
They have examined teeth of people way back. Stone ground wheat, guess what? Basically sand in your wheat and teeth ground down. Also healthier, not really 40 poise was considered old. Difference people can eat healthy, but like to blame the food industry. Quit easting out, prepare your own food, eat less, exercise.
At Stuart Moore 7744 wrote.
This was exacta mi experiencia. This is how I fix my gut. This proved to be difficult. Burn fulvic acid in water, as the fulvic acid destroys the residual glyphosate, which is everywhere in North America. Unpublished lab studies showed the 75% of glyphosate in 1% Full wheat is destroyed in 30 minutes, and glyphosate causes 8 generations of DNA damage. Fa also chelates out the soft and heavy metals slowly, with nanoaluminium being the most prevalent toxin. Water supplies are not tested for nanoaluminum. You have to do it yourself. Thus, castor oil and humic acid restore the gut mucus, which for me was mostly gone, likely due to the glyphosate killing the bacteria on the villi de produce. 3. Purify the blood, mostly by cutting al alcohol, which fixed my heart disease, which was caused by leaky gut. 4. My gut then remained weak and leaked from an bad wheat. This weakness diminished after I follow a Midwestern doctor's suggestion to take MSM daily always as the sulfur cycle is broken periodically for 1 week. Attacked DMSO internally until the death breath becomes intolerable. 5. Breathe browns, gas to get deuterium-free water and to get hydrogen into the gut, as well as flooding the body with soft electrons. 6. Drink water tested to carry a negative charge. You can make or buy an electrostatic tester. If you use the negative charge water in your BG water bubblers, less charge is discharged into the bubblers. More charge gets into your blood, which increases your structured water in your body a minimum 336. 7. The soft electrons of the cellular structure water seem to replace about 50% of the food calories, so eating now I choose food with high leftovers. This was important to allow the gut more time to heal each day.
Kvak wrote, "My sister flares up every time she eats industrial bread. She has zero issues with bread from our local bakery. Stone ground locally grown wheat that uses a sourdough starter. Look around and hopefully you can find a healthy bread source." At MKRMNXN wrote,
I kept thinking how this describes everything in our society today. We found ways to cut corners and efficiently render an approximation of real food. It generates more money for the manufacturer, while the consumer sometimes pays marginally less for a deceptively low-quality product.
At Logan Wolf 3393 wrote,
You're reacting normally to an abnormal food, so the rest of us, which don't have this issue with modern bread, are reacting abnormally? Odd way to put it. Also, most of this doesn't really matter all that much. Really, the only issue here that is actually relevant is the loss of the germ and bran, because the germ has a unique chemical called octocosonol, which is a fatty alcohol that is believed to aid in endurance perhaps. Explains how farmers back then could keep going and going, while also dramatically reducing fiber that is present not only in the germ, but also the bran. Still today, we are eating quite a variety of foods, and let's be honest, we are overeating calories due to the hyperpalatability of foods, sheer caloric density, and the lack of fiber. So yeah, modern bread isn't as good, but for the vast majority of us, it ain't that bad nutritionally, and it is, I guess, more pleasant for some of us. Personally, sometimes I do get the opportunity to eat some denser bread from another city that is likely prepared more like the old school way because it's denser, tougher, chewier. But honestly, I prefer it over the softer modern version. And since, like you mentioned, it has much superior yields, I would say it's easily a net positive. All that being said, I would like for more shops to sell old school, more nutritious bread.
John Smith MZ50E wrote,
So different countries make bread very differently. I was surprised by the comment that American bread stays soft on the shelf for 1 to 2 weeks. Here in Australia, supermarket bread lasts 2 to 3 days after baking. I know from my previous US trips that American bread is closer to cake in our eyes. It is so sweet and tastes very different. I also looked up what our bread ingredients are, and it said wheat flour, water, yeast, iodized salt, and a type of vegetable oil. It also said that some commercial loaves may contain soy flour, emulsifiers from palm, and added vitamins like thiamine and folic acid. We in Europe seem to have managed to largely keep our bread normal. Australia also has strict controls on GM crops, which are mostly limited to cotton and canola.
At Jeffrey Levin 9728 wrote,
This is NOT, the proper analysis. The people in 1324 had to consume 3,000 plus calories a day because they did entirely manual labor. Everything in daily life required them to work to obtain it. There was very little division of labor. If you wanted to eat, you worked in the fields or hunted for it. Everyone worked 7 days a week. There was no me time in 1324. In addition, if you had diabetes or bowel problems, you died quickly. There was zero medical system in 1324. Only healthy individuals made it into their 20s. Average life expectancy was under 40 in 1324, as huge percentage of people died before they reached the age of 10. Only the strong survive. Bread was no superfood.
At 666 Aaron wrote,
On the one hand, I see how this fits into the broader context. On the other, I can't help to wonder if this is a whole picture. We can say that 500 years ago, there were fewer X problems when the diagnosis was mostly non-existent. I see the same phenomenon with mental issues. It's easy to say that modern society is in a mental epidemic when in the 90s the universal prognosis was that the person is moody or hysterical, and the solution was a nice slap. That being said, it would be beneficial to strive for improved physical and mental health. But that is not profitable.
At Esprit 144 wrote,
Bread as it should be. They took away something that was the natural thing to eat and replaced it with cheap rubbish, making the original how it should be bread something of a luxury. This was done with food across the board, and look at the prices we need to pay to buy what should be the proper food we should be eating in the first place.
At Meatloaf 5772 wrote,
I too am dismayed by what the big food industry has done to bread and food in general. Unfortunately, to give the devil his due, aren't they correct in saying that making bread the traditional or medieval way just isn't viable en masse, since it's too expensive and insufficient to feed our modern, large population? So medieval bread will therefore likely never catch on for mass production. The benefits of real bread will only be for people able to make it themselves or buy it from small local bakeries.
At Croy's Repenge Wolby wrote,
You also have to account for the fact that these people were moving and doing hard physical work, which burns carbs and doesn't let your body get inflamed for no reason. Carbs do screw you up, but do less so if you actually use them as fuel.
At Chumbucket 6184 wrote,
Bread was never good. Ancient Egyptians ate the same as we do, bread, pastries fried in oil, little to no meat, and had all the same diseases and deformities we do.
As Throx 116 wrote,
So yes, our bread now is hard to be considered bread. But the issue is if we had bread made and shipped out without those preservatives, by the time they get to the grocery stores, they would already be moldy and have to be thrown away. And our economy here in the US at least doesn't make sense to have and rely on bakers to make fresh bread for people when in reality, not that many people would be looking for bread at regular intervals to warrant spending the resources to keep them around. It's more about cost effectiveness more than anything.
At Ironboy 3245 wrote,
Medieval bread was not a superfood. It's just that people didn't live long enough to die from the poison they put into them, or even diagnosed with those diseases. Those those with those diseases just died.
At Arniacando 6846 wrote,
I very seldom eat any bread. If I eat it 3 days in a row, I get sick, my gut stops working, and brain fog and bloating ensues.
At Useful Content 9894 wrote,
You can get sourdough these days. It could be as simple as most bread has sugar and industrial seed oils in it these days. Old skulls have crooked teeth and decay, so history is as accurate as usual. Eat meat instead when you can.
At Recourse Corner wrote,
am now stopping any bread from the store and making my own with stone ground. And found a good supplier here in Canada for such, seeing the ing on the package, more protein in it, zero sugar, sure it has the carbs, but that's from the big amount of fiber it has. Some iron as well. But that is it not massive list of ingredients, just organic rye, and the other bag has just organic whole wheat. So I will be from now on doing this.
At Love Shack 3095 wrote,
Meanwhile, the average lifespan in the medieval ages was 35 years. Today, we've more than doubled that. I'm fine with that trade-off for crappy bread. And people aren't diabetic because of their bread. It's because of their sedentary lifestyle. This is why we don't listen to non-doctors when it comes to medical topics.
At Timothy Bruce 9366 wrote,
26 I see a clip from at Townsend's, but I don't see any credit on screen or in the description. Why do you hide your sources? It rather makes you seem like you've something to hide.
Pisang No Known Jesus wrote,
This is AI. The voice in the other videos on this channel looks computer-made. Well, really came to this point where we can't trust what we set through screens anymore. It took me at least 10 minutes before I realized the robotic voice and the too perfectness. Maybe AI is the image of the beast? It's at least an image that can speak of itself. No humans involved. Man, we humans need to study the Bible and listen to the voice of God. Knowing Jesus is the only way out of this end-time deception and only way to heaven.
At Virginia Moss 7045 wrote,
When I saw a video of the starving Gazan people receiving sacks of flour as the only source of food for them, I thought, how much good can that do them? They need protein like soy or at least rice if not meat. I don't eat much bread, and when I do, it's whole wheat, but that still isn't enough to have healthy bread. It really does seem like capitalism is our enemy in everything in the quest for profit at all costs. Will we ever be able to curtail this economic evil?
and Molecules wrote,
I mostly have up eating bread years ago because the stuff in supermarkets is repellent to me, and I never had any digestive problems. I just thought it was gross.
At Helmajex wrote,
In medieval times, people were not allowed to hunt game in lands under a noble's control, but were generally allowed to fish as they pleased. A peasant near water would have access to fish in their diet as well.
At Bisasafras K wrote,
Lack of significant fermentation and industrial speed milling are more damaging than genetic modification. Thank you for mentioning those as problems so prominently. More in depth, most of those extra chromosomes are just to protect the wheat from insects and wheat diseases that have caused mass famine in the past, in addition to increased yield.
At Jennifer Svitko 5997 wrote,
I am lucky to live in an area, NYS, where there are farms that raise heritage wheat and ancient wheat spelt, einkorn, etc., which is sent to a stone mill to be ground to flour, and then the flour is sold to people in the area or sent to a local bakery that makes fermented sourdough. I would make my own bread, but the local sourdough bakery makes it so much better.
Kale Clo wrote,
There is something, in fact, deeply wrong with your video starting with the title, and it's the same with the entire content of this garbage. Medieval bread. W as not a superfood. Just as modern bread does not make you really sick. It's the super processed food that actually makes you sick. You. Like quite a lot of other empty-minded people. In fact, take imaginative information and throw it together as fact. When in truth, if I was to ask you, you wouldn't be able to produce a single piece of evidence to support your incorrect, oftentimes dangerous, affirmations. In fact, there is quite a lot to say against medieval bread that you call superfood. It was frequently contaminated with molds, dirt, sand, and stones, sometimes was made with peas, beans, acorns, or lower quality grains, especially during shortages, and it absolutely carried real risks of ergotism poisoning with ergot fungus. People, be mindful of what attention seekers like this one is offering you as truth.
The CMHK8 so wrote,
There may be truth to this, but there are so many factors that need to be taken into consideration. Like a lot of children died young, so maybe only the ones who didn't have gluten intolerance survived. Gluten intolerance and other diseases had not been discovered and/or named yet. Maybe people with these food tolerances died young because their bodies couldn't handle the food, etc. It's way more nuanced than this video is making it out to be.
At RocketRon7779 wrote,
Agreed, however. The reason there is so much diabetes is because, rather than being farmers physically working hard all day, most people are eating even more bread while sitting on their behinds all day. Truth is, most people today eat 3 meals a day when they only exert enough energy for one a day.